Hey everybody, Professor Snart here. Just a quick check-in as we continue moving through our English 1152 poetry course. So as usual, I'll pop into our due dates and see where we're at. I'm going to try to walk us through actually a couple of units ahead for a number of reasons that we'll see in a second here. So it is Tuesday, October 10th when I'm recording this. So we are just obviously finished up that Unit 4, looking at Unit 5, doing the comparative analysis between a poem and a piece of music, a song that you're familiar with or that you like, and then we'll ultimately be moving into a couple of our next units here that I want to walk us through. Okay. So once again, connecting poetry and music, it seems like a pretty obvious type of connection. I think it's also a good way of getting people to think about poetry, which is, again, like we've talked about early in our course, has this sort of baggage, like it's off the radar a little bit, and yet, lots of people love music that depends on, to some degree at least, lyrics and the poetic elements that might be in those lyrics. I think there's a longer discussion to be had about, are lyrics always poetic? Are those two things exactly the same? Because I think it gets complicated when, if you took typical lyrics, maybe sort of like the top of the charts type songs, and if you just looked at those lyrics on paper as poetry, it probably wouldn't look that great, for understandable reasons though, because they operate in different contexts. Obviously, lyrics have the whole music surrounding them, often a whole kind of cast of characters and a whole visual representation. We expect songs to do certain things like repeat or to rhyme in certain ways. That again, if we just took that and looked at it purely on the page, it might not really work as poetry. But certainly there are lots of lyrics and songwriters that do use poetic elements. So it makes for a good comparison opportunity. Remember, we're doing this as a video essay, so you're recording yourself. Or the screen that you might be looking at. Again, just to give us a sense of kind of like there's actual people in the class having these ideas and presenting these ideas to us. And hopefully the video essay, even though it might be a little intimidating in some ways, it actually feels more natural because you're just kind of talking to us about the idea. Okay, so I've been through this before, so I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time here, but I am going to look into some of our upcoming units. So Unit 6 is about midterm for our 12-week course here. We are going to revisit the portfolios that we created at the very start of the course. They're all listed here. If you don't see yours, it means you didn't post it, or I wasn't able to follow up with you. So if it happens to be missing, let me know. So you're going to want to go in and edit it following the assignment here. So these are the basic course objectives, not just for our Poetry 1152 course, but for any 1152 that would get offered in any other semester, online, face-to-face, 12-week, 16, any variation. They should all be trying to get students able to do these particular objectives. Now there's lots of flexibility that we have as professors about how we do that, but anybody who does English 1152, regardless of, again, the mode or the length or anything, they should all come out being able to do these things. So we want to kind of take a moment about halfway through our course and think about ways in which we've actually addressed or covered these objectives. It doesn't mean that we're finished with them necessarily, but certainly we've covered maybe all of them, you might find at this point, and we continue to reinforce or do things that help us to deepen the knowledge in those particular areas. So again, at the completion of the course, the student should be able to do the following. So our course objectives. So you're going to build 3 new portfolio pages as part of your website. So you're not designing a whole new website, you're just designing new pages. And there's a quick screenshot here of when you go to edit your site, over to the right there'll be this sort of tabs here. I think it defaults to the insert where you do text image stuff on an existing page, but we want to build or go to pages, and then find that little plus icon, and that's what you'll click to create a new page. And again, you can label it like midterm 1, 2, 3. You might do it by objective. There's even a way to build kind of a main page, but then sub pages within that. So if you want to get sort of fancy about it. But basically, we're going to take stock midway through our course here And you're going to reflect by building these new portfolio pages on 3 different objectives from the list above here, the one that we just talked about objectives that you think you have shown that you've accomplished, and accomplished not quite the right word, but right, that your work reflects up to this point, since really these are ongoing kinds of things. They can be any of them. Like I said before, you might find that we've actually touched on all of them throughout the various things that we've been doing, but you just need to pick 3 for this. So you're going to identify a particular objective, like maybe this one, for example. That's going to be the organizing principle for one of the 3 pages you create. And then, of course, the big thing is to provide specific evidence of your work in the course, which could be from any of the units, could be main work that you've done, could even be stuff that happened in like a reply, but it's specific to you. It's not just what has the course covered, but what has your work in the course. How is it reflecting that you can do the following, and then you're picking 3 of them. So it's a really nice moment to sort of take stock of what you've been doing and how that's connected to those larger outcomes. Often if we don't think about that big picture, even if we're enjoying a course, we kind of get lost in the forests. We don't see you don't see the forest for the trees. So you're doing unit work week by week or whatever it is, but you sort of forget, like, what is all this pointing to, or what is all this working towards? And ultimately what it's working towards is, right, is being able to do each and every one of them by the end of the course. Probably things you've all done, or all of them you've done already, but we're just going to zone in on 3 of them right now. Again, if you have any technical questions, you can always be in touch with me, but I find the Google Site Builder to be pretty intuitive, so if I get you started with this part of it right here, you can hopefully find your way forward. Remember to make sure that even though Google saves all your work, it's not until you actively click that publish button that it actually updates the viewable, right, or the public version of your website. So you could do a bunch of stuff, but if you don't publish it, when I go to look at your page, it won't show any of those updates. So it saves the stuff, but it doesn't actually make it public until you hit the go button here. It's set up as a discussion board. This is just a convenience for me, honestly. I'm just asking you to repost your main portfolio URL. Not every single page that you create, but just the one that's already listed in the portfolios list here. From there, I can get to, or should be able to get to, whatever new pages you've created that talk about the 3 main course objectives that you want to discuss for your reflection here. Again, it's just a convenience for me because it bundles them all together in one convenient place, so I can grade it a little more easily. Okay, so that's the main assignment for Unit 6, just a sort of midterm reflection, time to kind of take stock of where we've been and what we've done. There's also a discussion board that really is a discussion board built in to the bottom of Unit 6, but really what it does is prep us for our next couple of units. So we're going to do a group project here. You'll see that the groups have been formed. If you're not listed, you can be in touch with me. The only purpose for this discussion board as part of Unit 6 is just to make sure that your group is able to coordinate a primary means of communication. So you're going to go in here, and if I'm Becky, for example, I'll go into the discussion board, find the thread that's already been created for your group, and go in and just post your preferred means of communicating. Maybe it's email, text, carrier pigeon, whatever it happens to be. And then your job as a group will be to figure out how you're going to communicate to make the group project actually happen. You don't need to do any of the actual project. That'll happen in our next units. But obviously, to make the online group project work, we need to first be really, really sort of intentional about getting group members in contact with one another. So if you have problems, let me know. If somebody in a group doesn't do this, which is pretty low-hanging fruit, honestly, I'll take that person out of the group, and then we'll have to have a sort of individual conversation about what's going on. So you can't be the person that just doesn't participate, but somehow the group still happens and benefits you. I don't sense that anyone would intentionally do that, but again, there are some sort of safety measures here in place to make sure that everybody's going to contribute. And that starts with just getting in touch with your group and figuring out how you as a group are going to want to communicate with each other. Once you've figured that out, you don't have to email or ever come back to this discussion board. You can just do communication in whatever way you want to do it. All right, so moving forward, this is why I want to cover a whole bunch of units, because you can see that they're related. So that moves us into the start of the group project, which is assigned here, but not actually due here. So for this project, right, you're going to work in a group. We talked about that in Unit 6. You can work in a Google slide deck, a Google site. Again, those are great because they're easy to collaborate with. You're not emailing files back and forth or any crazy thing like that. You're basically just going to do a poet and poem kind of a analysis or spotlight, if you want to think of it that way. Picking one poet and then a few works by that particular writer, and then designing either, again, a Google slide deck or a site telling us about that poet, the historical, cultural things, anything interesting that you discover, and then analyzing a few of the works. So for the project, there's some pretty specific requirements here. I won't go through these ad nauseum. Make sure that you obviously are aware that you're really developing this thing. It's not just a couple of slides. We want to analyze at least 3 works by that, whatever poet you pick. So obviously you'll have to talk as a group about what poet and then figure out what works to analyze. Let's see. Obviously we don't want to just regurgitate a bunch of trivia. This should be interesting information. Each group member should ultimately write a couple of paragraphs talking about what the poems mean to them individually. So this really is partly just analysis that you might want to do some research for, but we don't want to make it just a dry, again, trivia thing that you can kind of Google all the answers for. So a good project will be interesting, creative, again, not just a bunch of dry facts. And of course, the big part is that it feels like one holistic effort, not just 3 separate mini things that have been glommed together because you've broken it out. So it really doesn't become a group project at all. Here in Unit 7, all you're doing is posting a link to your either slide or site or whatever platform you've decided to use, even though we know it's in draft form. Every student should visit at least 2, provide some encouragement and feedback on the progress to date. So the thing won't be finished here necessarily, but it can't just be a blank slideshow. You've had this whole unit to work as a group. So now you've gotten some feedback, and now we move into Unit 8, and this is getting us really far down into our due dates to finish up the project, right? Not much here. You're just finishing and posting, and that's about it. You'll notice that there's no reply requirement here. We'll actually do that in Unit 9, but that's getting us a little too far out, so I won't even bother looking at that right now. So just to review then, our due date system, right? We're finishing Unit 5 up soon. Then we move into Unit 6, 7, 8. 6 is primarily that midterm reflection, but it's also your first opportunity to coordinate with your group. And then we move through 7 and 8, so you can see the due dates really move us like out into November. So we have lots of time for this, but it is kind of a step-by-step thing. You can't just fumble the ball and somehow get it all together in Unit 8. That's not going to work. Okay, so online or a group project in the online format might be a little bit new to you, but it does work really well. I'm here to facilitate or help in any way that I can, and you'll see that our units are really built to walk groups through each of the component pieces, so we're not just hoping that it somehow magically comes together. Wow, takes us into November. It's hard to believe. Okay, so hopefully things are going well. If you have any questions about the course or technical issues, by all means be in touch, and I will talk with